Hello, everybody. I'm here with Mr. John Cashone. He's a longtime coach and educator in the Erie area and Mill Creek area. How you doing today, Coach?
Great, Mo. Fantastic. It was great to be here with you this morning.
Great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time to be here.
Absolutely.
So, Coach, let's talk about where you grew up, maybe the city, the state, a little bit about the neighborhood.
Yep. I'm an Erie kid, fourth son of my parents. We were involved in athletics at a very the youngest age. Our father was an athlete, and our mother was our super fan. Growing up, we all played football, basketball, and baseball. We grew up on the west side of Erie, and I remember to this day I was probably in second or third grade, and my parents wanted to move. We had outgrown our home, and I remember my two oldest brothers, who you're familiar with, Tom and Tim. They made it very clear to our parents that they had to stay in the Academy School District because they were already at Academy, and they weren't going anywhere else. And back then, there was 4 public high schools. Only Tech Memorial was the one that didn't have a district. The other 3, Vincent, East, and Academy, you went to school based upon where you lived. And so we moved about 8 blocks south of where we were, right by Grover, Cleveland. Okay. And that's really where I grew up. And great neighborhood, full of kids. And like I said, we played all 3 sports. Our father coached us in some of them. And, it was our lives centered around going to school, going to practice, and playing in the games. And, being the 4th son, it was just wonderful to be my older brother's biggest fan, and then learning how to play the game from them.
From them, right. So high school, did you play in high school?
Yep, we all ended up going to high school at the same place. We all went to Academy. In fact, I was the youngest. The brother that's a bit older than me, my brother Joe, who's now the CEO of Jefferson Health in Philadelphia. Yeah, he's the smart one. And Joe had gone to Academy too, and he played some baseball, and then became the athletic trainer, student trainer for Academy. In fact, he was the student trainer the year they won it in '79 with Levon Rowan and Wendell Lindsay. Man, what a great team they had. Mike Furman. But anyway, so we all went to Blessed Sacrament grade school, and all my friends were going to prep.
Okay.
And I said, I told my parents, I think I want to go to prep. And my parents said, well, you can go wherever you want. It's up to you. Your brothers had that choice. So I took the test, got in, and bought my parents bought me my blazer and tie. And 2 days before school was supposed to start, I told my mother, I said, nah, I got to go to Academy. And I don't want to say there was some peer pressure from the older brothers, but anyway, so I ended up going to Academy, and I loved every second of it. Just loved Academy. Unfortunately, between 8th and 9th grade that summer, out screwing around with buddies, and I was sitting on a roof, the hood of a car. It just rained, and we're being stupid, like 14 or 15, and I jumped off the car and cracked my head open on a curb.
Wow.
And so I lost the rest of my summer baseball season, and I wasn't allowed to play football in 9th grade. I had a fractured skull and a really bad concussion. I was laid up a good part of the rest of the summer. So I couldn't play football as a freshman, but I was able to play baseball, and then I went out and played football my sophomore year. Dan DiTullio was the coach. And the JV coaches were my brother Tim and Dave Andrews. And then we were average. I think about a 500 club. And then, but that whole year I was the center and played some defense. But every time I had contact that year, I saw stars. And I don't know if it was because of the head or if I sort of just lost my nerve. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe I was overthinking it. So anyway, I played baseball again my sophomore year, and then I went out my junior year and went to camp. Went through the first week of doubles. We went to camp at Edinburgh back then. Edinburgh or St. Mark's? No, sophomore year we went to St. Mark's. June. This was my junior year, and I just said I'm not doing it. And didn't go over very big in the household. I'll tell you that. Yeah. And my mother was probably the toughest one on me, but I gave it up. And I'd like to say I regret it, but I know where my mind was at that point. I just did not have it in my heart. But I played baseball, had a nice baseball career at Academy, played for Coach Ron Severo. Loved that man to death. Great person. Had a great senior year in baseball, won the Metro batting title. We finished second to Tech. Tech had guys like Joey Dolak, Jimmy Yerkowitz. Anyway, went to Gannon, played some baseball at Gannon for a year, and then got the coaching bug.
Okay.
I had already done some coaching and little league stuff, and had a lot of success at an early age. And that'll really give you the bug, because you really think you're something.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, you've got really good players. And I gave up playing Gannon baseball. I was obviously still went to school there, was living at home, and I started coaching high school football at Strong Vincent in 1985. And I was only a sophomore in college.
Wow.
I was coaching the JV team.
So you were early 20s then?
Oh yeah. And then started coaching basketball at Blessed Sacrament. I can go on forever, but I was coaching 3B baseball on the west side of town. So I was coaching. I had the bug, and we win the Metro at Strong Vincent. We were 4-1. We tied with Prep for the championship, and then I'm coaching basketball at Blessed Sacrament. I coach guys Dave Ashton, Eric Kuhn, Joe Orlando, Matt Orlando, Chris Sector, was a really great kid. Buggy Sansom, Will Sansom, who obviously met his demise in a horrible way some years back. And then what do we do in '86? We win the state championship and in basketball. And I really thought that would be where I would end up, coaching basketball. And I was a chemistry major at Gannon, and my goal was to be a chemical engineer, and really loved chemistry. And then coaching just grabbed me, and I went into secondary education.
Right.
And so I'm coaching football at Vincent, where our program's not in good shape. I win the state championship at Blessed Sacrament basketball. My team does. And then Pete Flynn asks me to come and be his JV basketball coach at Strong Vincent. For the first time, the city of Erie was going to have 3 basketball coaches in the program. Till that point, they had just the head coach and an assistant who was also the JV coach. Well, for the first time, for the season of '87, they were going to have a junior varsity coach that just coached the JV team.
Right.
And so I took the JV job there. So now I'm coaching 2 sports at Vincent. And running the weight program in the summer for the football program. And then Pete Donatucci, who was the head coach, got in touch with Joe Buffalino to come and take over the offense.
Okay.
And Buff said, yeah, I'll do it, but eventually I want to be the head coach. And of course, Buff's history. And then Buff came and took over the program. And then, I stayed with him, and really that's where I learned the game of football.
Right. Did you know Buff before he came to Vincent?
I did not. He coached my brothers. I think he coached my brother Tom in JV football at Academy years prior. I knew of him. He probably didn't know me other than that I was a Cochon. But when he took the job, he basically kept the same staff, because he didn't come in as the head coach. He came in as just the guy that was going to sort of transform the program.
Okay.
The rest of us were pretty green. My brother Tim was there. He knew football. He had coached at Academy and had a really good JV team that won the Metro. And other than Tim, we really had a bunch of guys that were really green, like myself, that were willing to dedicate our time, but really had to learn the game.
Right.
And that's what Buff did. Buff didn't only transform the program and make the players great players. He transformed us as a coaching staff. He taught us the game. And I could write a book about just that, because the clinics that we went to, the places he took us, the time we spent learning his system and learning the game. Not just people always say, well, tell us about the wing tee. It was more than that. It was learning the game. how to really develop a program, and that's what he did. He transformed more than a bunch of tough Northwest Erie kids. He really turned out a lot of people that ended up coaching for a long time.
Right. So how long were you an assistant at Vincent?
So Buff came in, his first year was 87. And so I was with him, my last year with him was 92.
Okay.
That's when I left after the season of 9. We won the state championship in 91, came back in 92. We knew we were going to be young, but I was shocked in 92 when we came back. You know, back then you had to recruit your tail off. You know, I know that word is taboo, but you know, kids were really going wherever they wanted to go. Even though there was sort of districts, everybody had an ace in the hole. In other words, you could offer a class that no other public school in town offered, and so you would talk to that kid and his parents and say, well, look, if you take this class, it doesn't matter where you live.
Right, you can come here.
Ours was Italian. And unfortunately, the guys that taught Italian in our building were tough old Italians. So, I mean, you really had to, if
you were going to learn, you weren't just here to...
Yeah, they were tough. And, but that was sort of our ace in the hole. And of course, Tech still did not have a district. So you were recruiting against those guys. And of course, you're recruiting against Prep. And then Mercier's Prep was starting football. So that was sort of my niche in the program. I was young, I was single, and I was teaching in the middle schools.
Right, right.
And man, we were recruiting anybody. I remember we recruited Kyle Horton. You know, Kyle was playing for us at Wayne, and Kyle was a good middle school football player. Middle school football, remember, had just started, and it was in the spring. And man, we were going after everybody. Like, God, I remember kids at Wayne that Cliff Crosby, his cousin Tony, I mean, all those kids. And we had some great kids too, you know.
Right.
And but it was a free for all, man. We were going after anybody and everybody, and then at the same time going after parochial kids. Well, and I was still coaching basketball at Blessed Sacrament at the time, and so you know we were going after anybody and everybody, and we did. We got the kids. So that was sort of my main focus on staff. Obviously, I'm coaching positions, but I was running the weight program, but I was also really sort of the recruiter. I'd get in kids, make appointments to see their parents, and then I'd bring Buff in.
Right. Okay.
And he was wonderful with the parents, and he knew so many people.
Right.
Because he was at East, he was at Academy, he was at Tech. He knew so many people. And so many fathers of these kids.
People trusted him, right?
They trusted him. They knew him, you know. So that's really how we built up the numbers. Because when we first got there, the program was really in some dire straits. It really was. So yeah, he had a plan, and we were all ears, and we did what he told us to do, and it was great.
Right. So. Can you talk about the state team a little bit?
Yeah. So let me just go a little bit before that. We had a great group of kids in the season of '89. That would have been Ashton and Coon. A lot of those kids I was coaching from Blessed Sacrament ended up going to Vincent, and a lot. They were really a big part. Bobby Lee, Joe Orlando. You know, so those guys are all in education today. Eric's a teacher in the city. Dave's a principal in Girard. Joe Orlando was administrator in Erie and then Mill Creek. Bobby Lee's the head of transportation. And there were so many kids that came there. And then you mix them with the hard-nosed kids from Northwest. And then we're getting a spattering of kids from all over. And we really, really were attracting some really good players. So in '89, we went 9-1. Our only loss was to Prep. We lose Ashton in his senior year to an ACL. Really hurt our offense, but we had a great core. And then we lose in the first round of the playoffs to Reynolds. But that season really helped get the program going. And I'll go a step really before that. The year before that, if there's one kid that we attributed to really turning around the whole attitude of the program, if that's possible, it was Roosevelt Sonny Carson. Sonny Carson played for us. I don't know that I ever coached a more dedicated athlete in my life, you know. And Sonny was a great player for us, went on to have a great career at Slippery Rock. I think his son's in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had some guys like that really helped transform the program. And then we got a taste of the playoffs that year. We weren't very healthy. We got bounced by Reynolds. And the next year, we had another good group of kids come in the year before that. And we really thought we were on the right path. And the next year we went 9-3, I believe, and we beat Harbor Creek in the first round of the playoffs. They were undefeated. They had the legend Chad Vaughn.
Right,
yeah.
right.
And then we played Sharon in the District 10 finals at Sharon, and they beat Michael Archie. They beat us up 28-0, I think. But our kids got a taste of the playoffs 2 years in a row.
Right.
And that paved the way for our championship team. We knew we had something special after the first game. We played, I think, Franklin, and they were our nemesis, and we bounced them. I think 44-0 or something. I remember getting in the car. We played on a Saturday afternoon at the stadium, and we were going to go scout our next week's opponent, St. Mary's, down there. They played Saturday night. And we were in our coaching garb. We all get in the car. It's me and Buff and Dave Brack and I think my brother Tim. And we get in the car, and I said, who wants to drive? Buff says, I'll drive, because right now I could drive to California. Because we had just beat our nemesis bad. And it was a great year. We had some great kids. We had an experienced coaching staff at that point, and got a few, stayed healthy. That was the key. You know, when you're only dressing 45 kids, and that's the program, by the way, that's not 10 through 12. You've got to stay healthy. And I remember being in coaching meetings and Buff emphasizing we've got to develop depth up front. And by that, he meant everybody's got to be able to play every position. You know, nobody's a guard, nobody's a tackle.
Right, they can.
And if a kid's an athlete, he's got to be able to play positions. I watched your interview with Joe, and he talked about the basketball player that had never played football. His name was Greg Tirak. And all of a sudden, you know, Greg comes out his senior year, and now he's going to be an offensive guard. And so he backed up Malik Martin, and then we were able to get Malik off the field.
Right.
And in big moments. So and that was sort of the philosophy that Buff had by developing depth with not necessarily just young kids, but with kids that were athletes that they could play multiple positions.
Right.
Romansky, Roby, and Quentin Orlando, the three, the heart of that team. Everybody remembers them. They each rushed for over 1,000 yards. They were obviously great players. Defensively, they all played outside linebacker. So only two of them would play at one time. That was to maintain their health.
Right, rotate them down.
Exactly. And that's what really was a big component of that team. We never lost anybody for the year, and we never had anybody that was on the shelf for a long period of time because we had developed depth, and it helped a lot too that we were pretty good, and we handled some teams pretty well, so you could get kids out.
Right.
It was a magical year. We meet up with our old foe Sharon in the District 10 title, and we knew it would be a battle, and it was, and we ended up beating them 14-10. Yeah, we're down 10-7, and we take the last drive and we march it in, and it wasn't easy,
Right.
But we beat them 14-10, and we knew as a staff, especially with our offense, because it was unique at the time. We did more with the wing tee than what most were doing. And we also employed a 3-step drop game. We knew we were hard to defend. The teams that had success defending us knew us from years prior. Right. Whether it was Minna at Prep, whether it was Jim Wildman at Sharon, they knew a lot about us.
Familiar with it, seeing
exactly. They knew what we had as far as personnel, but they also knew our attack a little bit. We knew if we could get into the state tournament, that would be difficult for teams, and that proved to be prophetic because even the games that were battles, the state championship, the Western final, the Western semis against Lockhaven, those teams never really stopped us offensively. We just had a little trouble stopping them at times. Yeah. Anyway, but just an experience that you never could talk enough about. We were a close coaching staff. Our families were all close. We had a terrific booster club. Doug Orlando, who was Quentin's dad, was president, I think, of our booster club. Our kicker, Jamie Potosnak, his dad was really involved. Jamie went and kicked for IUP then. We really had a really tight-knit group of families. The Hanlon family, Pat Hanlon was really involved. And of course we had great players, and again it was magical. It's something that you never expect that you're going to do. And remember, the state playoff had not started that many. The first year that the state playoff started was around 90 or 86, I believe, 85, 86 in that area. And then even then it was a point system, and you couldn't play enough higher opponents to qualify. I don't care if, and in fact the first, I think, state qualifier around here was Prep in 80, it was Colicchio here.
Like 90.
And then they got bounced by North Allegheny.
Allegheny.
Yeah, who was Wing D. Yeah. And that was at 90?
Yeah, I think it was 90.
90, yeah. And then, so the system really didn't allow itself for us to have a chance. And then, of course, in 90, I think if you won the district, was the first year you were automatically in the state playoff. Didn't matter, points weren't a matter. If you won your district, you were in this playoff.
Right.
So we were, 2 years in really, and we made a run at the right time. We were healthy, and it was something. Right. And I'll say this too. I'm not to take anything away if we did, because I would never do that. But the powers in the East at that time, the big power was Berwick. They had Ron Paulus that went to Notre Dame.
Right.
And they get bounced out of the playoff. And there was a team over there called North Pocono that everybody said was the best team, and we thought we'd end up with them. Well, they still had a point system on that side of the state, and they were undefeated and never qualified for the playoff. Yeah. And then Conestoga Valley, their coach Jim Contafio. I actually went to Texas with him years later. The Army East-West game when I had a player in it, and he had the kid that was a quarterback from Michigan. His name will come to me, but he had it, and they had all kinds of events set up for us as coaches, and Jim Contafio and John Cashone, our names were alphabetically.
Wow.
So we were, and so he said, just my luck. Going to San Antonio for a week, and the guy I get to sit next with coached the team that beat us in the state championship. Yeah, but anyway, Chad Henney was the quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so they made a run, we made a run, and I don't think anybody thought those two teams would be in the state finals, and we play them in the state championship game, and didn't have a great first half defensively, and spent our whole halftime talking about defending the option that they hurt us with in the first half. And I remember them asking Joe at the end of the game, "Wow, what did you do to shut down the option in the second half?" And Joe said, "Well, they never ran it again." They did?
I did.
They gouged us in the first half.
Right,
and they never went back to it.
Wow.
I don't know, maybe it was an automatic that they checked too if they saw it. So maybe our alignment persuaded them against it, but no. And of course, our offense was clicking again. Danny Olson, our quarterback, can't say enough about Dr. Olson, just a fantastic kid, and what a leader, and it was great.
Right.
Unlike anything I was ever part of.
Right. So let's fast forward to when you become head coach at McDowell. Can you talk about those years?
Yeah, let me. I left coaching in '92. After the season of '92, got my master's in '93. Was out of coaching. Went to General McLean. Ken Walker, an old friend, called me and asked me to come out and take his defense, and I decided to do it. And Buff and my brothers were still at Vincent, and we had a great year. Went undefeated in the county, won the Erie County League Championship. Some great coaches out in the county. were still involved down there. Dan Budaszewski, John Ballard was at Northeast. Some really great guys. I think John Gage was at Northwestern. They had a great team. But we had a great team at McLean, went undefeated. Some great players. David Polk, Larry Kerr, Jamie Teska, some really great kids out there. And we qualified for the District 10 playoff for the first time in McLean's history. And who do we open up with? Strong Vincent. And Buff's still the head coach. He had some great kids. Michael Miotis, quarterback, Brad Orlando, Robbie Dykes, Andy Tamlin. Boy, he had some great kids on that team, and that were all freshmen when I had left. And we went to McDowell to play them in the semifinals of the AAA District 10 Championship, and they beat us. They beat us 14-7, 21-7, something like that. Really hard-fought game. And then they went on to play Sharon in the District 10 again. So at the end of the season at McLean, Ron Rudler had given me a call, and I knew Ronnie a little bit. He was coaching at McDowell, and he said, I'm looking for a defensive coordinator. And he said, I'm familiar with what you did at General McLean. Can we at least sit down and talk? And I wasn't looking to leave McLean. In fact, I was sort of looking to get a teaching job out there. I really liked Kenny Walker. We had a really young staff. It's a great team coming back. And the principal out there, Donnie Ickes, was a great guy. And he told me, hang in there. We'll have a teaching job for you.
Right.
And I met with Ron and Ron's kitchen and told him what I was doing defensively, and told him, I obviously would consider it. I said, but I'm not going to lie to you. I'd really like to get a teaching job. And at the time in the city, after Tech and Academy had merged into Central, I was a young teacher. I started teaching in '87, so there was a lot of movement going on every year. This school was not going to have this many science teachers, but this school was. So I was bouncing Roosevelt. Then I was at Woodrow Wilson. Oh, Roosevelt, then Wayne, and then back to Woodrow Wilson, then back to Wayne, and I had just had enough of that.
Right.
I wanted a job that I could call my own, and McDowell told me that that was in the cards. They had an opening, and so I went with Ronnie and his staff, great coaches on that staff, and took over the defense, and ended up teaching at J.S. Wilson, and we. I walk into a nice situation. We end up having some great players. Joe Megorian, we had some great kids. Keith Balco, Jeremy Klein. Jeremy played at New Mexico State, I think. Joe Megorian played at Mercyhurst. Then Brad Orlando decides to transfer to McDowell, not for football. He wanted to play basketball for Pete Flynn. And of course, Pete was now the basketball coach out there, and I had coached with Pete. I was Pete's JV coach in basketball at Vincent,
right.
So I knew Pete really well. And I was engaged to my wife, and was tired of making that drive from Woodrow Wilson to McLean every day.
Right.
So I take the job, and we end up having a great season. Brian Caldwell was our quarterback. He was a junior. Laban Marsh went to Connecticut. He was on that. He was a junior. We had some great players. And we go 12-2 and lose in the Western Finals to the eventual state champ, Penn Hills. I think they had 4 NFL guys on that team.
Yeah, I remember that team. It was a great team.
That was 95. 96, we go into 13-0, and now we're playing Woodland Hills, who had Midday Williams. I played quarterback for Syracuse. We play them in the Western Finals at Sharon, and we get off to a 14-0 lead, and we get beat. And we end up 13-1. And then the next year, we go 12-2 again, and that was the game that I really thought we had our best shot. We played Upper St. Clair in the old Pitt Stadium in the Western Finals. They had the kid that played pro baseball, Lee, was on that team, I think, and kid who went to Pitt, Bob Yukno's son, big tight end. And they beat us in the last couple minutes of the game, 21-14. We turned it over inside the 5, right at the end of the game. We were going in to tie it up. and we turned it over. But that was a tough one because I really thought all around we were a better team.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ronnie stayed for one more year as the head coach, and that would have been 98. And then Ronnie decided to get out, didn't want to be a head coach anymore, and I took over. And then he coached with me for a year. I brought Buff with me, brought a bunch of other guys from Vincent. My brother Tim was already on staff now at McDowell. Dave Grack, who's my best friend in the whole world, coached with me at Vincent, and then came out and coached. And Mike Burke brought him back out of retirement, and then I stayed as the head coach till '04 until I retired. Yeah, and we had some great teams there too.
Yeah, who were some of the kids you had out? You remember any guys from
when I was the head coach?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my last team we were 11-2, and beat Prep twice. Won them. That was the first year for what do they call them? Regions.
Region.
Yeah, that was the first year.
Right.
We won our region, and won District 10, and then we ended up losing to the eventual state champ Central Catholic. My quarterback was Rob Mattis. Had some really good players on that team. Our running back Jason White. Jason played at Ohio University. We had Andy Parshell. TJ McGraw might have been the toughest kid on our team. We had a kid that had transferred here from Canada. That was our running back, Justin. He was our one of our running backs. We had a great line up front. Put me on the spot here, trying to remember all these names. Getting too old for this.
You got a great memory, Coach.
Yeah, we had some really great offensive linemen. I really thought that was one of the keys to our success. But we met up with a team that just was better than us in Central Catholic. The guy that's now at North Allegheny, Art Walker Jr., he was the coach there then. And they had they were really good up front. But Demetric Braxton was one of our tackles. Demetric ended up playing for Jerry Schmidt at Duquesne. Matt Kozer was one of our offensive linemen. We had some really good young kids. Anthony Weaver, Brian Raz, Joe Lasota was our center. We had some. In fact, that was my last year. That was '04. In my opinion, I got out that year, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But when I got out, I think the most talented class I ever had at McDowell was the class I left. They were going to be seniors. It was that junior class. They were great kids. But we won District 10 that year, beat Prep twice, and we won District 10 in '02 and beat Prep twice. '03 we lose to them at McDowell 14-7, and then they beat us in the District 10. We got banged up pretty bad, and we had Kyle Mitchum on that team. Kyle ended up playing at Ohio State. Best offensive lineman that I ever saw play the game, and we were fortunate enough to have him. Had 80 some offers,
Right.
Parade All-American, played in the East-West Army game in San Antonio, Texas. His career at Ohio State, unfortunately, got upended by lots of injuries. He just did not have the size to stay healthy down there. He was naturally about a 265-pound kid.
Okay.
And they made him 315 in a matter of a year.
Wow.
And his body never handled it.
Just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, he played a lot his sophomore year, and his senior year, he missed most of the year with injury. But that was '03, and before that, I call it the Prep Glory years. My first 3 years, 99, 2000, 2001. Of course, those were the most talented high school football teams I may have ever coached against. Those 3 years for Prep, especially the first two.
Right.
He had some special kids, and to this day, in my opinion, the best running back I ever coached against, and I coached against a lot of good ones because we were in the state tournament and played against them, was Jawan Walker. I mean, they had some good kids, Prep, over the years. Colicchio, Mark Tate. They had some great kids, but I never saw anybody with the balance and the sheer toughness, horizontal and flat-out speed that Jawan Walker had. phenomenal player, just a phenomenal player. And so they bounced us hard my first 3 years. I'm thinking, man, geez, this head coaching stuff might not be all it's cracked up to be. But no, till we got after him, we got him and beat him twice. And we had some great kids. Sean Hoffman, Bobby's son. Sean was a great player. Joey Gabbard, tough kid. That was our running back. Our quarterback was a baseball kid, Brett Krasanik. Man, was he tough. We did a lot of midline option stuff, some triple stuff. And we lost in the quarterfinals to Altoona, who we had beat bad that year on our field. It was all mud. And then we get scheduled to play them down there. And not to sound like I had sour grapes, but it's the only game I ever coached in where I thought the referees made a difference. And not necessarily intentionally, but we end up losing by 4 or 5 points, and I really thought they called a couple of touchdowns back. But we had a great group of kids. My nephew Mike Cachon was on that team. He ended up playing at Westminster College. He was a really, really tough kid, boy. We really had some tough, hard-nosed kids on that team that ended up becoming champions. Winning the old Metro, and then winning District 10, which was no easy task back then.
Right. So I had the pleasure of working with a lot of guys, or knowing guys that played for you over the years, whether it was Vincent, McDowell, and they all got stories. I mean, they could put a book together.
And they did.
What do you think it is about you? What is it? Tell me about that. That.
Well, I was a young coach. I really started out as young as you were a young coach too. And I think when you start out young, you still remember your playing days. You know what it is to be like a player. I think your relationships with the guys tend to be a little more cohesive, And so I knew, and then I was always really involved in the weight program, the off-season stuff. So I was a single guy for most of my younger years. So I had all the time in the world. So I was around these guys all the time, and became very, very close to them. And then, and I had some tremendous influence on how to coach kids the right way. I coached for Joe Buffalino. I coached for Ron Rudler. I coached for Pete Flynn. I mean, those they're all Hall of Famers in Erie County,
Right.
And not just because they were all gurus of the game they coached, because they knew how to relate to players. They knew that fine line that differentiated between being their coach and their friend. And so the influence that those three in particular made on me, and then I had 3 older brothers. And never had a younger brother. So oftentimes those players that I was coaching felt like they felt like they were younger brothers to me.
Right.
And I started coaching again at such a young age. I'm coaching high school football in '85 and I graduated in '83. Think about that. You're a couple years older than those kids.
Right.
The kids like, and I know you're familiar with some of these guys like Eric Kuhn and Dave Ashton. These kids, I coached those kids from when they were 12 years old at Blessed Sacrament Grade School, and then all the way through high school. And so I knew these kids even on a different level, and so I became very close to them and had a rapport with them, I think, that sometimes is not there. But then you got to shift gears, because then all of a sudden you become the head coach, and that's out. You know what I mean? Now,
Right.
When we coached with Buff, Buff was the bad guy. You know what I mean? And he'd tell us, you go in, you be a good guy.
Right.
And so I was the good guy, or some of the other guys, and because of that, you became closer to the kids.
Right.
But I became really close to a lot of families. A lot of the fathers of these kids became good friends of mine. Because I knew these kids from such an early age, and then when they're done playing, and even when you're done coaching, your relationship doesn't end.
Right.
As you still see these kids
Still
to this
players,
day.
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I could tell you more former players' names than I can tell you the names of my cousins. You know what I mean? It's just how it is.
Right.
And you think about it. When we coach, we spend more time with their kids than their parents do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And we see parts of them that their parents never
Oh, yeah?
see. Yeah, exactly. Amen. And so, you know, I always had a pretty good relationship. I mean, heck, there's some kids, I'm sure, that probably still have voodoo dolls and pins in their closets that they used to stick into my eyeballs, you know. So it wasn't all sunshine and roses, that's for sure. But no, I coach a lot of great kids, and they came from great families. And you know, I'm an Erie kid. Spent my high school years, my whole family did, in the public system. I strongly believe in public education, and the thing I believe in most about public education is we have kids that come from every walk of life, every part of the city, and meshing them together into a program of sorts. There's nothing more satisfying than that. When you have a kid that's coming from, you know, the Wayne Park area, and he's playing with a kid that's coming from, you know, went to Blessed Sacrament, and they, to this day, are best friends, man. That's because of the times that they played ball together, broke bread together, and hey, I don't want to sound cliche, but there's nothing better than that. You know what I mean? Nothing. So, yeah. And you said you could write a book, and my players did.
Yeah, some people told me to mention the book. What can you tell me about that? 'Cause I've heard that from several people.
Well, I probably should be. The book should probably have some sort of credit in it to Joe Buff, because you know Joe Buff was not only a great coach and a great X and O guy, a guy to learn the game from. He was the master of the one-liners. And of course, when you coach with them, for the number of years I coached with them, you can't help but steal some of those one-liners,
right,
and then also fabricate some of your own. So when I went to McDowell, you know, McDowell is a little different place, obviously, than Strong Vincent. How do you say it? At Vincent, we could pretty much say whatever we wanted to say, and it was going to stay on the field. That may not be the case in a place like McDowell, you know. And but that's all I knew, you know.
Right.
And I went out there, and I just
Same guy.
Exactly. And those players, man, they love that side of it, and they made a book. And I remember, and I didn't know much about the book. One of the best coaches I ever had coached for me was a guy by the name of Chris Caldwell. Brian Caldwell, the quarterback's older brother. Chris is a great football coach. He ended up getting out of coaching because him and his wife moved south. They have 3 beautiful daughters. They live in South Carolina. Chris was a great football coach, dedicated. Him and my brother Tim were the defensive coordinator when I was the coach at McDowell. But Chris says to me one day, this is when I'm still the defensive coordinator for Ron, and Chris was on our staff then too. And Chris says, "Do you know about this book that the players made?" I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he started telling me about it. The players, and wow, there's a bunch of them that I don't know who all put them together. They put together a book of my one-liners. And then when I did get a chance to see it, I was a little panicked because there was no editing.
There was no filter in the book.
Amen. And but that book's still floating around out there. I remember, I think Dave Heil, Jeff Heil's dad. Jeff was our kicker that went to Connecticut and had a great career. And Dave Heil shared a copy of it with me one time. I said, "Man, I'm still teaching. This better stand around." Right. It's out there, yeah. I know. The guys at McDowell kids, we had some really great kids. Again, great family. And you know, Ronnie Rudler. Ronnie, I don't know of anybody that ran a program better than Ronnie. Ronnie's a great football guy. Really knows the game, X and O guy. Gave me a great opportunity along with Kenny Walker at General McLean. But Ronnie and I became best of friends, still are to this day. Great football guy. You know, he did something for me at McDowell. He knew what I wanted. I wanted a teaching job, and he made that work with our old AD, God rest his soul, Dave Hanlon. And Ronnie said, "You can take the defense." He said, "The only thing I ask you is, you know, you develop it with our terminology, right, and our system." And we had a guy by the name of Harry Morrison on staff who was, you know, Harry coached with Tony DeMeo at Mercier's College, spent some time at Erie at Academy with Dan DiTullio, and then Erie High. later on. Harry was a great defensive line coach, so I was very sensitive to that I wasn't going to come in and just completely overhaul their system. But we, in essence, changed the philosophy, what we were going to do. We were going to be multiple. We were going to make sure if our game plan wasn't effective, we could quickly shift gears and do something different.
Right.
And that was really our premise defensively for all those years. It really started at McLean when I went with Kenny, and we took it to McDowell. And we really ended up having some great defensive teams. And Ronnie, I give all the credit to Ron Rudler, because he had some pretty big personalities on his staff, guys that had been in the game a long time, and he made us mesh. And not only did he make a pretty solid coaching staff out of these guys, Ronnie completely ran the offense. He completely ran the program. He was in charge. And you got to have that guy. Mm-hmm. That guy that's going to run the program. And not only did he make us mesh with our systems, he made us all really good friends.
Right.
And, man, those were some of the best times of my life. Those years I spent with him out there. And again, to this day, he's one of my best friends, Mm-hmm. And we still golf together. We see each other. I go watch his band play.
Oh yeah.
He's I can't say enough about him, and he really is the guy, in my opinion, that transformed McDowell football. He turned it around out there. There was a lot of years just things didn't work out. I think Joey Sanford had a good year back in the '80s when he first got there. But Ronnie turned the program into just that, a true program. Prior to him, nobody was making use of their middle school programs as part of their program. We had 3 middle schools that all had football,
right,
but they were just sort of their own entity.
Right.
Ronnie,
he joined it together.
Exactly, and made them all McDowell football.
Right.
And that was the key at McDowell at the time. You had to make sure you were getting your own kids. You had to stop letting Mill Creek kids go to prep, and that's what we did. In fact, we were getting kids from prep. Probably the best linebacker I ever coached in my career was a transfer from prep to McDowell. Ryan Irvin, and he was on our last 2 championship teams.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Aaron Slocum, who's now the coach.
Right.
And that's really what's so cool. You see guys like Brad Orlando, who played for me, and obviously Aaron Slocum, guys like that are back coaching.
Right, they're in the game now. Right.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. I was at Vincent. And, give me a signal if I'm getting long-winded here. But I was JV basketball coach at Vincent. I was the varsity assistant in football. And I'm running the weight room. And remember I told you I was really the guy that was out recruiting 8th graders. And I went to our principal at the time, Ray Fiorelli. Man, I have tremendous respect for to this day. And I said, Mr. Fiorelli, I'm really stressed. I was teaching at Vincent. I'm coaching the 2 sports. I said, I go in all these kitchens and I talk to these families and I run into a lot of parents who say, yeah, but your baseball program is so poor. Our kid likes to play baseball too. Mm-hmm. What? So I had heard enough of that. I finally went to our principal, Mr. Fiorelli, and I said, we've got to do something about baseball. It's the program's just
right. It's keeping kids away.
We got great players here. He said, well, let me look into it. So we're playing football, football season. We're practicing, and of course, as soon as football's over, I'm going into basketball. And I remember we were just at that. I think it was our state championship year, or maybe the year before, because we were in the football playoffs. So I'm coaching practice football, and then afterward, I got the gym open for my kids coming into basketball. I remember being in the gym, and Mr. Fiorelli comes into the gym. Of course, he's home. He had gone home and came back. He said, I got good news. I'm making a change in the baseball program. I went, oh, geez, thank you.
Right.
He said, here's the bad news. You're the head baseball coach. I said, no. He goes, no, I did my homework. I know you played ball, and you're the head coach. And he said, so start working on it.
Start working on it.
So what I did was I hired my brother Tim, who was a great baseball player, played for Academy, all Metro, then played for Edinburgh when they had baseball. Hired my brother Tom. They were going to be my varsity assistants. Hired Matt and Joe Orlando, who were cousins, who both played baseball, Little League for me, and then also played football for me. They were graduates now and getting into teaching. And by the way, Matt's still teaching in the city. And Joe, of course, was an administrator. They were going to run my JV program. And so I go and tell Mr. Fiorelli that. He goes, John, you only get a varsity salary and a JV salary. I don't care about that. We'll figure that out. We'll divide it up.
Right.
We'll add them up, divide by 5, and we're. And I knew we had players, and we win the Metro title 2 years in a row.
Wow.
Last city
Just like
school
that.
to ever win one. Yeah, we had some great players, man. Eric Wagelin, Steve McKenrick, a fireman that lost his life tragically in Florida, was our first baseman. Chris Goodell. We had Tommy Brandau. We had some just baseball purists. And we win the Metro, and then we lose in the state playoffs to North Allegheny, where they had a kid by the name of Paul Falia. His father was the team doctor for the Steelers. And
he went to Notre
we
Dame,
lose
didn't he?
eight innings down at Newcastle's field. I forget the name of it. Anyway, then the next year we win the Metro again, and we had a kid that moved up here because we had the ESL program, David Claudio.
I remember him.
What a high school baseball player, yeah. We win the Metro again that year. And then I stayed 2 more years. The third year we went 12-3 in the Metro. We went 17-4 overall, and we lost to Franklin in the District 10 playoff. And my last year, I think we were 9-6, and we did not make the playoff. But I did 4 years as the varsity baseball coach. So at Vincent was my home. I did it all 3 sports. I loved it. Loved the kids. I loved the kids from that neighborhood. I loved the mix that we had from kids from all walks of life. And those are great years that I fondly remember that I'll never forget. And that was about it, man. That's great. I was really fortunate, as I'm sure all your guys say, because I got to learn from some great people, including my parents and my brothers. But guys like Pete Flynn, Ron Rudler, Joe Buffalino, just tremendous models for me to learn how to be a coach and to know what it takes. And then having great families and great players. I went back in 2019. Brad Orlando had asked me a couple years in a row if I'd come back, and I said, I'll come back, but I don't want any pay. I want to volunteer. I'll help out, do what you want. And we had a great year. We lost, our only losses were we lost to Prep, and we lost in the state playoffs to State College.
Mm-hmm.
And but I knew my time had passed. That was my proof that, I enjoyed the year, I enjoyed the kids, but it was just too different.
Right.
It was different than what I remembered, and it was time. It's time. So now what do? I do the color commentary for the McDowell football games on the radio.
Great.
WPSE. I do it with a guy by the name of Ray Reisdorf. Great guy, great sports fan. Ray, man, he's Mr. High School sports around here, as far as I'm concerned. So we do all the McDowell games, and some are on the radio, some are streamed on their internet streaming system, and I really enjoy it. It's I got former players that are coaching, and it's my way to stay sort of involved in the game, and I really like it.
Right. So, Coach, to wrap up, if you had all your players, just sitting in front of you, BS, Vincent, McDowell, and they're all sitting here, what do you say to them right now?
Yeah. Well, the obvious thing would be thank you, because they gave me far more than I ever gave them. They gave me a lifetime of memories, and gosh, just the number of things that I've enjoyed that are directly related to coaching young men. I thank you wouldn't be enough. That would be the first thing, and the next thing I'd say is, man, let's get together and have a beer. That's the one thing that I wish I did more of. I wish I got to see more of them. Buff, I don't know if he mentioned, he does a great job with that. he gets the guys out to his house. I still see guys. I still see a lot of them. You know, Dave Ashton, Dave was like a younger brother to me. I coached him for so long. I still see Dave, and boy, I don't know if I get any more enjoyment out of going watch him be a father and watch his kids play sports. Right. Yeah, but a lot of kids like that too. You know, I out to dinner last night, saw one of my former players who's a teacher and was a coach, Vinny Sanita. You know, seeing those guys out, now seeing them involved in coaching. Joe Orlando's kid plays at Carnegie Mellon football, went to McDowell. Just great, great people, and I would simply say thank you for the memories, man. That's one thing nobody can take away from you. Right. You know, is the great memories, and I know you have them too. Right. It's special, and this helps rekindle a lot of those relationships and a lot of those memories. So, thank you to you too. Yeah, we're all very thankful. Yeah,
thanks, Coach. This is Coach John Cashone. Thank you for your time, Coach. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.